This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so for this session, we have, I mean, we left some topic pending for thread analyzing. We seen that how we analyze the threads and what are the things that we look for. Okay, so before going to the last section of this topic, thread patterns. So I think we should go again and just revise all the everything that we had covered as of now, because it's almost a 1 week gap. So let's just to keep everyone on the same page, we'll just revise it and what we have learned till today, and then we'll just continue on it. Okay. So let me just minimize this window. You guys are able to see the screen, right? I hope so. Okay, thanks Anna for confirmation. Okay. Okay, so as you can see in the agenda, we had discussed about everything related to thread. I mean, this topic was to to get understanding of threads and whatever there is to understand about threads, everything, whatever that the thread types are and how do we monitor, take the thread dumps and all the things. Okay, so we started with basic things like what is thread and what is process, what is the difference between. So we understood that the only main difference between process and thread is that thread processes has their private or memory space. Okay, so whatever a process is working on, the objects or the system objects, the context, the identifier, environment variables, it has its own space, right? On every process will has its own space, and two processes cannot share that. Whereas when the threads are concerned, threads will have a common shared memory space for the objects and the processes or objects or tasks that they are processing. So variables, the system variables they are using, so they are on the shared process, shared memory space. Okay, so and we also know that thread is an entity within a process, so there can be a multiple threads for working for a single process. Okay, but there is nothing like a single process is multiple processes working like another single process. So there will be processes will have another tree. Okay, so each and individual process will be working on a different thing. Okay, so after that we also saw that what are the advantages of threading over the processing. So why we have threads in the picture if we already had the process of doing the things. So we know that threads are very responsive because it's they are working on a small block, right? So a task, for example, whenever you say a function or a process involves several tasks to do in it. So and if we segregate this task, so one thread is doing one task, another thread is doing another task, and these threads are running concurrently, so it automatically increases the execution time. So this is another advantages. So you have better response time, you have faster context switch, you have effective utilization of multiprocessor system, right? Because there are multiple threads are running at a time, and nowadays all of the system or all of the CPUs are multiprocessor, so they can utilize very well, these threads can utilize very well the CPU resources. Then another topic is another advantage is resource sharing. Okay, so for example, as all the threads are working on the same task, they can share a common resource, the code and everything. But in case of processes, it has to be a separate for each and every process. So there is another then advantages over there. And then communication. Because all the threads are synchronized. These threads are working on the same thing, so they can communicate with each other easily, unlike the processes, because if processes has to communicate with another process, that it involves a set of transactions. So handling the process, what is the process handle, and it has to communicate with the other process, and it's a complicated process to communicate between two processes. Okay, then enhanced throughput system, as we already discussed, right? Then we had discussed about what are the different types of threads, being main threads, right? So there are usually you can segregate threads in two basic types, one user level thread and another kernel level thread. So what is user level? So as the name suggests, user level, that means it's something which is created by user or for user. right? So whatever the application threads we have, or whatever the threads that user has created by programmatically, that will be your user thread. Okay, what is the kernel thread? So the kernel threads are implemented by OS. So these threads are recognized as kernel threads, which are there by OS to do its own task. Okay, so OS threads will not be kernel threads will not be visible for you or our users to verify and do anything. So these will be only visible by OS, and these are only so same way that segregating the same task and assigning multiple people to do it. So like that is multitasking. So like so the that multitasking is a benefit in multi-threading, right? So why a multi-threaded program contains two or more paths that can it can run concurrently. Okay, so that's why it has some basic advantages that we already saw, that thread creation is faster, context switching is faster, communication between the threads is faster, threads can be terminated easily. So overall it improves the performance of execution time of your application. Sorry. Then we saw what is the general thread life cycle. So whenever a new thread comes in the picture, so what are the different stages of the thread? So whenever a new thread is created, it will go to the start. Okay, it will go either it can be go to the runnable state, or either it can go to the dead stage. You can see from new stage, it can either go to the dead or runnable. So when it's in runnable state, that means it is ready to execute the code, or either it is running. Okay, so then coming to the running stage, after running stage, it can again either go to the dead state, or it can either go to the wait. So waiting is nothing but the sleep wait or the timed wait, which is programmatically written for the process. So thread is waiting on something, or a thread is waiting for acquiring the log, this kind of things. Okay, then we saw that the stages of life cycle is the same thing. Then we saw that how do we monitor this kind of threats. Okay, so we also saw that JConsole, JVisualVM, this can do tools can be used to monitor the threads, and on the command prompt we use JStack. And we also saw that for Windows machine there is something Process Explorer, right? So which gives you the idea about all the threads running on your Windows machine. Okay, then the main topic we saw that how do we take the thread dumps. So, okay, so I have listed all the methods that are as of now available for taking the thread dumps. Okay, so one by using command line options, we know that a JStack command can be used to take a thread dump. And then if you are on the Linux machines, you can also use kill command, right? So kill -3 is a 3 is a signal that we use to attach to the process, and kill will print that process on the output file, .out file. Okay, then JCMD is again Java Oracle tool, for troubleshooting the JVM. So using this also you can take thread dump. Okay, then on Windows machine, you have to do control plus break. So we also saw that live, how you can print the thread dumps using control plus break on Windows, right? But the only disadvantage with this is that it prints on the command line. On this, all the entire stack will be printed on your command line. Okay. Then there is something called threadmx bean. So this is when you want to take your thread dumps programmatically, or you want to play around with it, or you want some thread dumps with a particular you want to trigger a thread dump for a particular event. In that case, you can use this threadmx bean. So you need to write some snippet of code, and you need to keep it running on your program. So whenever this particular events occur, that program will automatically take a thread dump using this threadmx bean. Okay, so using tools we saw that how you can take a thread dump. So JVisualVM, you just click on thread dump. At the right side you can see, select the thread, click on thread dump. The thread dump will be created. in another it will be open in another tab. You can see here thread is thread PID 20021. Okay, then we saw also in JMC how we can configure it. So as whenever you're starting the JMC, at the starting point only it will ask that within how many intervals you need to take a thread dump, or you want to have a thread dump to be taken. So you just mention 10 seconds or 10 milliseconds interval, and it will start as soon as it starts GMC, it will start taking thread dump at regular intervals. Okay, then we know APM tools. Nowadays we are using AppDynamics, Dynatrace, CA Wiley. So this kind of tools have most of these tools have this functionality available to take thread dump. So I've just listed one particular for AppDynamics. So steps to take a thread dump using AppDynamics tool. Okay. Okay, then the next part was interesting, that how do we take a once we have the thread dump, now how do we understand it, right? Because a single line of thread dump has very fruitful information, but we need to understand it. We need to properly correlate it with whatever the application we are running on, or whatever the context, whatever the objective is, or whatever the objective with which we are taking the thread dump. Okay, so for before going that, I mean, before reading the thread dumps, we should be aware of this some terminologies. Like we already I mean we already seen that what is a thread, what is a live thread which is running or doing some work, what is a block thread which is actually waiting on something, or it is resource blocked on particular code block, right? Then waiting thread, then there is a sleeping thread, and monitor. So monitor is nothing but a JVM mechanism which will facilitate the concurrent access to the threads. So if there are two or more threads are asking for a single object, so JVM will automatically assign them to this monitor block. So monitor block will take care which thread to assign first, and which thread it should keep waiting, like that. Then there is a deadlock terminology. We also know that if two threads are seeking resources which are locked by each other, the thread will go in a deadlock position. Okay. So we also saw that what is deadlock, and dining philosophers problem. So multiple threads whenever involved in deadlock, that is also called as a circular deadlock, or it is a dining philosophers. So we also saw the deadlock programmatically, right? We had a sample program and we generated a deadlock, and we took a thread dump with the deadlock, and we tried to analyze that how these deadlocks are happening. Okay, so now for Windows machine, or before taking thread dump to read, we need to identify the Java process ID for that particular process we want to take a thread dump. So now using JPS command you can do that Java process ID. So if now you can see here I had this JPS command run on my command prompt, and I got this thread PID listed 20012, right? So once we got this PID, then we can take the thread dump using either your command prompt, or you can take the thread dump and by the any other method that we have listed. I mean we have discussed before, right? Now once we had this thread dump, okay, so what are the different sections in the thread dump that we can see over here, right? So the first line is your timestamp, which gives you the at what time you have taken this thread dump. Okay, then it lists the JVM what from which the dump was generated. Okay, so details about the JVM, like what it is, you can see over this full thread dump Java hotspot. So it is a 64-bit server running on this mixed mode. Okay, so this is also an important information, though it is not directly significant for analysis, but you will at least have an idea that what time duration it was taken. So whatever the time window you are analyzing, or the problem whenever JVM is having a problem within that time frame, you can easily check that if the thread dump is referring to the same time frame or not. Okay, and just below these lines you had this thread class SMR information. Okay, so we also saw that what the SMR information will list the all number of threads. So you can see there is length equal to 13 and their thread addresses. So all the 13 threads address will be there. Okay, so SMR is nothing but your memory reclamation information, right? So just below that you will have this ID, and that will total the addresses of all the non-JVM internal threads. So you can see this reference handler, final address. So these threads are non-JVM. That means these are not the application threads, but which are the threads which required for JVM to work its process. So we call it as a daemon threads, right? So all the native thread addresses are listed over there. So this is not that much significant at this point of time, but again when we see these patterns now, now when we will discuss this thread analyzing pattern, we will come to know. Okay, next we saw that after this block there is something called SMR information is list. So then it starts each and every thread. The stack trace of each and every thread will be there. So for example, now you can see reference handler. So it is segregated in different patterns. So if you read the first line, reference handler #2 daemon prio. So this has meaning for every word written over there. Okay, so the double quotes in the inside double quotes, it's your thread name. What is your thread? It is the reference handler. #2, it's a number of thread within the JVM. Then whether it's a daemon thread or a native thread, if it was an application thread, it will not this daemon flag will not be there. So if it is coming over there, that means it's a daemon thread. Then it gives you the JVM priority first. What is the priority of this thread to be run? Inside the JVM. Then it is the next is OS priority. So what is the priority of this thread uh, under the OS to run? Then you have your thread ID. Okay, what is the address this thread has started? Then your native ID again, and then last part is waiting on. I mean the status of the thread, what this thread is doing. So it is saying it is waiting on this condition for this particular block. It is the address has been mentioned, and the state is runnable. Okay, so this is the entire line gives you some information, right? So yes, this is the same thing that we have written over here in this table. It is illustrated. What is the name, then ID, then daemon status. If it is daemon return, that means tag denoting if thread is a daemon thread. If it is not there, the daemon will flag will not be there. Then it's a priority, OS priority, then address, right? So everything is that the single line gives you this kind of information. Okay, then the thread stack trace. Okay, the next section after this one line is over, you can see that add deadlock program, deadlock runnable, and then there are some lines written over there which is nothing but a stack trace. Okay, so this stack trace is nothing but it gives you the entire information the thread is working on. Okay, so for in the reference handler that we saw above, it is nothing particular important in the stack trace. But for our application thread, so for example, now you can see on the screen thread 0. This is other application thread. So it is also important to see what is the different this what this thread is running on, or what this thread is working on. You can see in the stack trace it is showing that the thread status state is blocked, okay, on object monitor at deadlock program, deadlock runnable. So you can by reading that only you can see that it is running a deadlock program, line number 34. So it is waiting to lock this particular resource, and it is already locked on this particular resource 4465A0. It is already with this thread, and it is waiting for 4565B0, right? So it is waiting for this resource, and it is already locked this resource. Okay, so this kind of information you get from the application threads. Okay, then we also understand how the JVM native threads are listed, so GC threads, and we will also see that how these GC threads are generated in the JVM. Then JNI global references. So if there are multiple JNI global references, it is also again candidate for investigation. That if there are multiple global references are there. Then we also saw the deadlock threads. The next section of the thread dump, the last section, the last part, it will give you the issues with your thread. So deadlock, they have, JVM is that much smart, so to automatically detect deadlocks. So at least if there are deadlocks, you will automatically get this section inside your thread dump if there are any deadlocks. So in this sample example that we saw, this deadlock was generated. So thread 0 and thread 1 both are locked, both are waiting to acquire the lock for the object which are already locked by each other. Okay, so now coming to the patterns, right? So we saw that what are the different types of threads and how do we take thread terms, then how do we read it, what is the information written over there. Now let's go through some of the patterns of the thread dumps. Okay, patterns by meaning patterns is these are some types of thread dumps, in past that people have observed that this kind of particular thread dump, when this kind of errors are occurring or when this kind of pattern is observed, what is an issue, right? So I have listed few of the thread dump patterns, so which are common and which are exhibited by most of the users, right? So we will discuss these different types of patterns. Okay, so stack overflow error, this is the first one. Okay, so we everyone know that what is stack is doing, right? Stack is nothing but it is doing whatever the thread is working on. So it is creating an object, it is using an object, storing some location of that object system. So whatever a thread is working on, that will be stored on your stack, right? So it is also this consumes a memory, right? If stack has its memory, so in the JVM architecture session that we saw, we have discussed about the different memory spaces for thread and the JVM, right? So stack, each and every thread has its own stack memory, right? So we call it the TSS, right? So this thread stack memory, whenever this memory limit gets exceeded, you will see this kind of error, stack overflow, right? So whenever this stack overflow error is thrown, and you can observe this error in the thread dumps. Okay, so actually I don't have this any kind of thread dump which is given the stack overflow error. I think we can generate it. I had one sample program written, so I can show you. Let me just check you. Stack overflow, right? So I can show you how this stack overflow error looks like. Sorry. Okay, so you can see this is now just creating the objects. This program is nothing but it is just calling a recursive method, and it is creating object on stack. At the end, you can see it is ended now, and at the top you can see exception in thread main java.lang.stack overflow error. Okay, so this kind of error you get, stack overflow error. So what to do in in this case of issue, right? So if when you observe this kind of stack overflow error in the thread dumps, so there can be two solutions possible, right? First, you just need to evaluate that why this thread is throwing a stack overflow error. Does this actually require so much space in the stack? Is it actually, I mean, uh, can you justify, or the thread can justify this particular uses of space? If not, then you need to check at the code level, right? Fix the code. Why this particular block of thread is having it needs so much memory space to add everything objects on the stack. So instead of putting it on stack, you handle it within the code. Okay, so it can when a particular stack overflow error will occur, it will automatically print the line of code, the number of line where this issue is actually occurring. So it will be easy for developer to fix it. In the other case, when there is no other way around to fix the code is already optimized and thread has to have some more breathing space on the stack, right? In that case, you just have to increase the stack size. So how do we do that? So that we have also seen that in the JVM options, right? So different types of options we also have Java options, XMS, XMX. So within that, there is another one option, -XSS. So it is nothing but it is increasing the thread size. So but this option, you have to give this option when you are starting your JVM, right? So again, I mean, you cannot increase thread stack size in between when your application is running. So for that you need a bounce, so you add this option and then bounce it again. There are some specified state stack sizes for with respect to your OS. So for Windows OS with 64-bit, you have a definite stack size of 1 MB. Okay, so for 32-bit Windows OS, you have a stack size of 310 KB. Okay, so this stack size is already predefined. So this can you this is something that you can increase depending on the requirement. Okay. Then there is your next pattern, stayed stuck in your java.net socket input stream. Okay, so what is this? First, you need to understand what is this socket input stream, socket read. Okay, so there was some kind of person, I don't remember. So he was from IBM, so he has explained this kind of phenomenon very well. So let's just try to understand the analogy first. So you might be knowing that you might be calling your friend, for example, and and depending on where he is, his response will be different on every time on phone, right? So let's say if he's very happy and he's on vacation, he's very happy, and you call your phone, so you will you will automatically, hey buddy, how are you doing, what's up, and everything, right? And when the same friend is in some different situation, let's say his boss is already burped on him and he is very upset, and that time when you call him friend, so he will sound some light or he will take some time to respond to your call. When this friend is in a meeting, he might not pick up your call or he will hang up on your calls. Okay, so there are different situations how he will react to it, right? Same way, when your application is interacting with multiple protocols or multiple connections. Okay, so in that time, this java.net socket read input stream socket read, what it does is, it is actually, this API is used for read and receiving the data from this remote application. So when it is, when your application is talking to the multiple protocols or multiple things at a time, so this particular socket is started and it will wait for read, and once it started, it will receive this response from that third party application, or you can say the protocols. Or until your application responds, your JVM will be stuck in this thread only. Okay, so it will be I mean, there will be no further progress. So a good example I can show you is, so any RMI thread, so whenever its reference handler threads will run, it will go to this stage. Let me check if I have this. Let me just show you. What I can do is, we will just run this over JPage Store app, and I will show you quick hip down. How does this look like? Okay, so Apache Tomcat is starting side by side. We will start the JVisual VM. Okay, so this Tomcat PID is already listed over there. So double clicking it to open. In threads, I'm just clicking on thread down. Okay. Okay, so now we can see there at the very first thread is socket input stream socket read 0. Okay, so it will go in this thread. Okay, and unless and until you're retrieving some information or nothing, nothing is happening. So if you read it complete, the complete stack trace, it is read 0, then it has acquired the read socket read, then it is reading, then it is stream filling. So these are the buffer stream is filled. So uh, this thread actually acquired the lock, and it got the information of what it was expecting. But in some cases it will not process beyond this, so it will stuck in this thread only, socket read 0. Okay, so what are the possible solutions, or what are the possible ways we can handle that? Okay, so if your thread gets stuck in this socket input stream, socket read 0 API, and it doesn't recover from it for a particular duration. So what will be the effect of it is that the end user, whoever actually accessing the application, or the doing some transaction, he will see no response. So most of the time when when we are accessing the application, we see that circle, and there's some kind of circles roaming around, and we have to wait for some response. So that is the case when this particular transaction is in process. So if multiple threads get stuck in this kind of thing, it is your application totally will become unresponsive. Okay, so in that case it is a concern of your application availability. Okay, so just a moment. Okay, I think I opened some different deck. I had the solutions listed over there. Docs. So in this case, in this particular case, when we see this particular threads are stuck in your socket input output, socket input stream API, we have to do some kind of we have to apply some kind of settings. Okay, so there are multiple ways you can get rid of this behavior. Okay, so first thing is you need to check the timeout settings. Okay, so what are the different timeouts are available? So we have just listed the options over there. So first thing will be your JVM network setting. So under the JVM networks, we have two options available. Okay, so first is your connect timeout, and then is your read timeout. Okay, so this is the flag. You can specify dgen, dsun java dsun .net.client.default connect timeout. Okay, so it specifies. Let's just see if we have that in our JVM that we already started. So it is not automatically mentioned over here, because if you want to change it, we have to give it explicitly. So we need to mention it explicitly. So there is not listed, this is not listed over here, but it can be over there in your system properties, default connect timeout or something. So it is again, it's not there. So but this is a flag that you can use over here in the JVM arguments to increase the timeout. Okay, so these are the two flags. One is your read timeout, and another is your connect timeout. This read and then against connect timeout. Again, you need to specify the value in milliseconds. Okay, so whatever this value you are giving over there is, it's a millisecond. Then next time setting is set SO timeout. Okay, so what is this? SO is nothing but for the socket. So if you're dealing with the socket level programming, or if you're directly programming the sockets, so you need to check this particular setting. So you can set socket, you can set the socket timeout by invoking this API. Set SO timeout. Again, for this API, you need to give it in milliseconds. Okay. Next, if you are using the JDBC, I mean this particular if error you have observed and you are using JDBC connectivity to connect for JDBC thread, you are observing this particular error. In that case, you need to increase the timeout for the JDBC. So it can be done using set query timeout. So for JDBC, it's in seconds. Okay. So set query timeout API, it will be in seconds. And in the similar way for Oracle JDBC, you have socket input stream dot socket read 0. Okay. Then there is WebSphere. For WebSphere, you are if you are seeing this timeout, so you have this two flags: WebSphere default query timeout and sync query timeout with transaction timeout. So these are the two flags you can use inside the WebSphere to increase the timeout. Okay. So these are the different output levels. Guys, you are understanding, right, what we are discussing over here. So this particular socket input stream dot socket read 0, this involves with JVM to collect information for different types of protocol or different connections, right? So for example, if your JVM is connected in an environment where there are multiple middlewares which are talking on either it's a database, is talking on JDBC, Oracle JDBC, there is something, some web server is on WebSphere. I know this kind of different types of threads are there, will be created inside your JVM, right? So if you're observing particular this issue, right, your threads are stuck in socket input stream on socket 0 on a particular middleware or particular object or particular client for this thread. So for that we are looking for this solutions, right? WebSphere, if there's it's stuck on WebSphere, so you can increase the WebSphere default query timeout and sync query timeout with transaction timeout. So these are the two parameters for WebSphere server. Okay, then the next setting is you can look for is the network connectivity. So if everything is fine, everything is going good, but still you are observing this issue, that means it has something to do with the network on which your JVM is running, right? So you just need to check, you can manually check with Wireshark. Okay, you can install that Wireshark and you can check if the JVM is able to transfer the packets and receive the packets, what level of communication is going through the JVM. Okay. Then third thing is when if you're working with the remote application, so it might be issue that some remote application is having with the network. So you need to check with the remote application team. Okay, and the fourth is non-blocking HTTP client. So there are some kind of HTTP libraries like Grizzly, Netty. Okay, so now for HTTP libraries, for most of the JVMs nowadays they are using Log4j. Okay, so apart from that, there are few client libraries like Grizzly, Netty, so they does not require any blocking operation. Okay, so they don't have any blocking operation on thread to proceed. So it's an entirely different thing. So, but it is not that much used in high level applications or high secured applications. So these are not used. So if you want to use it, it has to go through some scrutiny. So you have to implement first POC, then you have to go to the test and to the code changes. So it will involve a lot of efforts. So usually it will not be recommended, but there is some kind of thing, so it's good to be aware of, right? Okay, so then there is a next pattern, analyzing threads, circular deadlock. Okay, so we already saw that what is deadlock and how the threads will get in the deadlock position. So this is the dining philosopher's problem, right? It's very famous in computer science. So when there are more than two threads involved in a deadlock situation, we call it a circular deadlock, right? So you can see over here thread 0 to thread 3. So these are total 4 threads. So now thread 0 has acquired lock on L1 and it is waiting for L2. Okay, and then L2 is locked by thread 1, which is waiting on L3, which is locked by thread 2, which is waiting on L4, which is locked by thread 3, and thread 3 is again waiting for L1, which is locked by thread 0. So it's a circular deadlock. Each and every thread is waiting for resources locked by every other, right? So there is no solution for this kind of phenomena, right? You have to have restart your JVM. right? So it will automatically result in some failure of your application availability, or your code will be stuck there. So there is no way to recover. So the only thing is that you have to revise your code and avoid this kind of situations where circular deadlock may happen. Okay, so the next thing is the athlete pattern. Okay, so let's understand what is this athlete pattern. Okay, so what is an athlete is actually doing is, an athlete is full of energy, whenever he's doing in athletics or whatever. Let's say for a runner, or who is running on the pitch. So he has to do a very high, I mean, he has to spill a very high energy to achieve his goal, or to perform his athletic behavior. The similar fashion, when we say in the JVM, when a threads are in runnable state, so these runnable states in threads in runnable state, it will consume some CPU. Okay, so when we are seeing, or when we are analyzing the thread dumps for CPU consumption, we should see this tab, runnable threads. Okay, so what we should observe, what are the threads in runnable state. Okay, so what happens in this particular pattern is, there are it will have various threads in the runnable pattern, but they are not actually processing, or they are not actually working that much. So how you can identify is that, for that we have the athlete pattern. That means if a thread is in runnable state and it is actually working on something process, it will have a CPU consumption, high CPU consumption, right? So the runnable threads which are only pretending, or but the threads is not actually working on something, or it's not running, they will not show that much CPU consumption, right? So what will happen is, when your JVM is flooded with multiple runnable threads, though they will not consume some CPU, higher CPU, but it will automatically impact if the number of runnable threads which are idle and they are doing nothing, but still they are hopping on CPU, which is actually causing some problem to the actual runnable threads which are actually doing some task, right, which needs some CPU. So it causes problem. So this kind of threads, or this kind of pattern, you have to recognize it. You need to check how many threads are runnable over there in this thread. When you take a thread dump, you need to check what are the threads which are runnable, and you need to check, at the same time you need to check the CPU consumption, how the CPU consumption is going, that particular duration, right? So next pattern is your treadmill pattern. Okay, so why this treadmill pattern and what is it? So for treadmill, like you keep running at the same place, right? When you are running on treadmill, you are running at the same place, but you are not actually moving forward, correct? So the same fashion, in the JVM, there are some kind of threads, okay, which are running, but they are not moving forward. So most of the time you might have experienced this kind of issues, right? So CPU is spiking up suddenly, and it will not go down until and unless you restart the JVM. Again after you restart the JVM, it will repeat the same thing, right? How do we identify the really running thread? So you can see over here, in this stack trace, Santosh. So okay, I've just given an example. So you can see this thread is showing the state runnable. Okay, and at the bottom you can see jboss.remoting transport.socket dot server thread dot run. Okay, so it is actually running on the server socket wrapper.java. Okay, so this kind of thread, you can identify which are running or which are not runnable to uh, by reading this stack trace, and also by checking the CPU utilization for particular duration. Okay, so inside our JVisual VM, we can also see these threads which are in runnable state. Okay, so AGP NIO. So HTTP neo. So this kind of threads you can see this is now running thread. Okay, and if I just click on this thread inspector, where it is, HTTP neo client folder. Okay, so you can see this particular thread is runnable, it is showing runnable. Okay, but when you read it till the last, you can see lock ownable synchronizers or none, so it is not actually working on any code block, but it is showing you as a runnable, right? So this is not actually processing anything, so no neo endpoint, it is just I mean this is just a polling thread which is which is waiting to read or waiting to get any data from the client. Okay, so this is not, you can see this is locked on three resources, but it is not working on anything. So this way you have to read the stack trace of thread. Okay, now you cannot read the stack trace for any n number of threads. So we will come to that, how there are different types of tools that you can use to get a visual representation of your threads and the status of threads. Inside this overview, in this monitor tab, you can see there's a number of threads which are running and the CPU utilization. So you just have to check. So you just have to check wherever your CPUs are spiking at the same time, what is the thread level, how many threads are there running at this time. Okay, so there has to be a correlation between your CPU spiking up and the threads execution, and plus you have to read the thread dump. Okay, so coming to the treadmill pattern. Okay, when you are moving, I mean you're running at the same spot but you're not moving forward. Okay, that is a treadmill pattern. At the same time, I mean in the similar fashion, for your JVM. So when when you started and CPU spiking up, and then again when you restart the JVM, it will again, after some time period, it will again start CPU consumption and it will again spike up, right? So why this kind of problem happens is, so there are few reasons for this kind of problem. So first is your repeated full GC cycles. So multiple GCs are coming, so which are causing your CPU to go high. Then you have your non-terminating loops. Non-terminating loops means an infinite loop. When your code goes in infinite loop, it is waiting for one resources and then again other resources waiting for another, so it goes in infinite loop, right? So then third part is your non-synchronized access to hash map. So hash map is not something very what we can say, very well written or very well utilized structure. So if it is not synchronized, so if you don't give a synchronized access to the hash map, it will create CPU spikes. Okay, so due to this kind of thing, so you will see this behavior of your JVM getting stuck. Okay, so how do you diagnose it with your thread dumps? Okay, so for doing if this kind of issue, if you're observing your CPU spiking up suddenly and then again you have to restart your JVM, and again after restarting JVM again the same phenomenon is observed, so you need to take 3 thread dumps. Okay, so after every interval of 10 seconds you have to take 3 thread dumps. Okay, then once you have all these 3 thread dumps, first thing is that, so you need to check for 2 types of threads. First, on the same method, how many threads there are in the your thread dump, all the 3 thread dumps which are running on the same method. Okay, and the second, if they are in runnable state. Okay, so these are the 2 things that you need to look out when you take 3 thread dumps. Okay, so once you have all the 3 thread dumps, so you are first checking on if how many threads they are running on the same method. That means all the threads are working on the single same line of code, which is again causing your CPU to spike up, right? So you just need to check the stack trace and which line of code is that, and you can ask developers to fix that particular line. In the second case also, if they're in runnable state, you have to ask your developer to check whether all of these threads are running on the same line and they are in runnable state. So this is an issue at code level. So you have to ask your developer to fix this kind of issue, right? So I don't have that example of treadmill pattern with me now. Okay. So there is next pattern, traffic jam. Okay, so what is traffic jam? So we are usually, usually know when a particular some kind of crash or some accident is there in front. So due to that, all the vehicles or all the cars which are moving backside, they will be stranded. So they cannot go further or they cannot go beyond because there are again cars from backside. So this is the same analogy. So whenever a particular thread is acquired some lock, right, and it is not going to release it, and there are some other threads which are depending on this lock, and they are waiting for this lock. So it will build up an infinite transitive blocks. Okay, so this is not a deadlock. Understand, it's not a deadlock. So deadlock is there. Deadlock is when both of the threads are trying to acquire the lock, which is actually already there with each other, right? So this is not the case of deadlock. In this case, there is one particular thread which is not releasing a lock, okay, which is required by some other thread. Again, some other thread is requiring a lock which is required by the previous thread. So it will cause a traffic jam situation. You can see this diagram below. So it's a graphical representation of this traffic jam pattern. So this is one finalizer thread is there, ajp.py. So you may not be able to see it. So this is one finalizer thread. It has locked on one resource, due to which the rest of the threads are also blocked, right? So because all of the threads are waiting to acquire the lock on this resource, and this particular finalizer thread is not releasing this resource, right? So this is why, that is why this kind of error is coming. So this kind of errors, I mean this kind of phenomenon you will see in the traffic jam pattern. Okay. uh, okay. Okay, so how do you deal with this kind of pattern is that you need to check the thread dumps for a particular thread which is actually having or which is working on a single, or which has acquired the lock on a single resource. Okay, so you have to again go to the developer and ask that for this particular thread and class, the status will automatically give you the line number and everything, right? Okay, the next your pattern is several scavengers. Okay, so this is something to deal with your GC threads. Okay, so scavengers means like coming and swiping out everything, but there are multiple scavengers. That means if there are multiple GC threads, it will again cause an issue. Okay, because what happens sometimes, there are default GC threads are created due to the default behavior only. Okay, so for example, if you have some scenarios are there, so there are 128 to 56 500 GC threads are created. Okay, but actually these many threads were not required. Okay, because we all know that GC threads are daemon threads, right? And daemon threads will have higher priority over the user threads inside the JVM, right? And these GC threads will consume a lot of CPU. We all know that, and it will also cause the stop the world process, which will again pausing your application activity. So many GC threads is not a good thing, right? Good thing to have. Okay, so there's some kind of algorithm, or there is some kind of formula which is there, which decides how many GC threads will be there. Okay, so for example, now I've given an example for parallel GC. So if you are using a parallel GC, sorry, so if you are using a parallel GC algorithm, so in that case, how the number of GC threads are calculated is like this. Okay, so if the number of processor is less than or equal to 8, the GC threads running will be 8. Okay, so if there are 8 processor running, so your GC threads will be 8. Okay, if you have more than 8 processors, okay, so for example, if you have 32 processors running on a particular machine, so how it will be calculated? 8 plus your number of processors minus 8 multiplied by 5 by 8. So in case of 32 processors, it will be 8 plus 32 minus 8, which is 24 divided by 5 by 8. Okay, it is 13. Okay, so 13 plus 8. No, it is what? 15, sorry, 15 plus 8. So there will be total 23 threads for a 32-bit processor, or sorry, for a 32 processors machine. So in the similar fashion, for different types of algorithms, there is a formula for GC threads. Okay, so we also need to check, take care, or we also need to check how many GC threads are there in inside the application. When we take a thread dump, we already saw in the section above that all the daemon threads or all the JVM non-JVM threads will be listed. Inside that, GC threads will also be listed out over there, right? So we need just to check how many GC threads are there and are all these threads are required or not. Okay. Then there is next thread pattern, which is a stock ticker. Okay, so what is stock ticker? We know that if we all follow the share markets and all these things, if a particular stock goes up, right, it will it is rallying the profits. Okay, so it will be profitable for you. But in this kind of phenomenon, what stock ticker phenomena we call is in the JVM perspective is that when suddenly your thread count is spiking up, right? The live threads or the peak threads that you are running is it's suddenly spiking up to the maximum shoot up. So for example, now when you started the JVM under the normal operations, it is having some 100, 500, 100 threads, and it suddenly spiked up to the 500 or 600, right? So this is an issue. So it's kind of stock ticker, the graph will show you a single line and it will suddenly spike up. So this can be suffocating your JVM. So this kind of issue will lead to the thread leaks, okay, or some other problems. So this can happen in three different scenarios, like severity of the issue. First, you check what is the severity. When you make a new release to the production, it's always best practice to compare the thread count of your normal running state with the previously running release in production. Okay, so this is again nowadays, because we have agile environment, all the projects are having just releasing some things and accessing the application again. So in that case, it is again a useful phenomenon to compare the thread count, how many threads were running at the previous release application, and now if with the new code or something new, what are the thread count, right? So whenever you see this kind of issues, so there are some important metrics that to be looked on. So first is that you can check the too many threads can create the out of memory error. Okay, unable to create a new native thread inside the, because see, JVM threads will not be created in your heap space, but it is using the space on which JVM is residing, right? So that's why your Java processes has more value than whatever you give to the XMX, right? So this is kind of thing that you need to also check how many threads are there, number of thread count. Okay, next thing is this pattern, all roads lead to Rome. Okay, so what is this? This is something similar to the traffic jam pattern. Okay, but in traffic jam, this particular thread is acquired one resource which is not releasing anything, right? So it's stuck on that, and all the rest of the threads are trying to follow that thread, and they are also stuck. So in this kind of case, all roads lead to Rome. Actually, there are multiple threads are working on the same code block. Okay, so say for example, some part of the code is which is written by developer in a synchronized block. there are multiple threads which are generated, and they are again targeting a single method. Okay, so if this is the case, this will automatically cause the CPU spikes, and you have to analyze this kind of behavior, that why there are 10 or 15 threads are working on a single method. Is it actually required, or it is the requirement of application, or this is something unusual behavior. Okay, so this is all the things that we have now. Then there are a couple of this the last thing, this repetitive strain injury. Okay, so what is this repetitive strain injury? So that we discussed in previous slide, like we take thread dumps within an interval of 10 seconds, right? So for this particular kind of phenomenon, when you are observing the significant number of threads on the same stack trace, okay, so all of the stack traces of all the threads are similar. Okay, so in that case, this repetitive strain injury pattern is acknowledged. Okay, sorry. Okay, so what will happen is that there are some kind of scenario, like for example, if SOR or external service is slowing down, the significant number of threads will start to wait for its response. So for example, if your JVM is trying to get some data from your database, and let's say a database is slowing down. Okay, so as application is running on JVM, it will automatically slow down the threads. Okay, so all the threads will be in the same stage. Okay, so the for all the threads that are running at that point of time will have the same stack trace. Okay, so and in for let's some another scenario, if a thread is acquiring a lock and it is never releasing it, like it's the same way that we observed in the above traffic jam pattern. Okay, so then several other threads who are also in execution path, they will also get blocked. Okay, they will also have the same stack trace. Okay, again, if there is an infinite loop inside the code which is not terminating, that will again lead some threads to execute the same loop again and again. So that will be again, all these threads will have the same stack trace. So these kind of scenarios will be there. I mean, this kind of issues might be occur when you are observing the same stack trace. Okay, so this is all this kind of patterns that we have seen. So it is very difficult to get an idea about how this kind of patterns are there. So there is one very good tool available in your market, and it's open source. You might have heard about it. So FastThread, right? FastThread.io. So this is nothing but online portal where you just have to upload. Okay, so you just have to upload it. Let me just. Okay, you can see the screen. So I already tried to upload a single thread dump that we had previously used in our application, or in our session. So a thread dump, I just tried to upload it and tried to get what is inside the thread dump. Okay, because nowadays we don't have enough time to actually go through and read everything that is there in a thread dump. Obviously it is a good idea, or it is a good thing to know everything about these threads, but for an application, or for a production level application, there will be thousands of threads running at a single time, right? So in that case, you cannot go and read the stack trace of each and every thread and check what whether this stack trace is similar to another thread or not, right? So you don't have that enough time, right? So in that case, what you can do is you just have to use this kind of tools. So FastThread.io is very good tool. Okay, what is this viruses? So FastThread.io is it's a very good tool. So you can see over here, I've just given a single thread dump, sample dump.txt, and you can see it has generated a good amount of graphical textures. It has a very good graphical representation. So for the thread dump I have submitted, it is showing me that 12 threads are runnable, 3 are in waiting, to in the block state. So this particular thread dump I given which was generated for the deadlock situation, right? So the deadlock tutorial that we had programmed. So for that I've just uploaded the thread dump, and you can see over here everything is listed, and you are presented with a graphical format, right? So daemon versus non-daemon, how many daemon threads are running, how many non-daemon. So you just click on view details, you will get the details of the daemon threads. What are the daemon threads which are running inside your JVM? Okay, I think it is showing next session has been expired. So let's just try to upload another. Okay, so this is some sample. There are two dumps, sample thread dump and one is sample dump again. And just click on analyze. Okay, so now you can see in the report you see there are different types of threads running inside the application. So 26 are waiting, 28 runnable. So just yeah, yeah, the audio connection was lost, Sanu. So I was not speaking anyway. Okay, so this is some kind of graph that Santosh was also asking, that how we can find out the threads with same stack trace or threads which are runnable are not actually consuming the CPU. So you can see threads Okay, so there seems to be some audio problem at this side. So this is the kind of graph you get, and this is kind of the report you get for everything that is inside your threads or the thread dump. Okay, so I come across this tool a long time ago. Uh, Before that, also there were some tools like TDA is there, thread dump analyzer. So but this is something that gives a more sophisticated representation of the threads, and everything that has to be understood from your thread dump is represented in a graphical pattern. Okay, so this is all for this threads and everything. And if you think you want to understand much more, or something is not clear, so let me know so we can also discuss that. And once that is done, we can conclude this session. Let me just show you also the uh, deadlock thread, and let's see how it is analyzing. First, till that time, guys, please recollect, and if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so you can also add the zip and .gz formats for over here, and you can also have multiple thread dumps. So let's say, I mean, as we discussed, right, so three thread dumps after every 10 seconds interval. So you can add the three files over here and just click on analyze. So it will automatically understand that there are three thread dumps for three different durations, and it will automatically compare it. So the problem with this tool is, guys, like because it involves working on a third party server. So inside most of the organization will not allow this, to give your thread dump to upload your thread dump to some other organization server, or some other third party company or third party tool. So that's why you need to what is this? So you need to check with the particular management and resources that, whether we can use this particular tool, because without seeking proper permissions, please do not uh, use this tool, because it will upload a thread dump on their server and it will analyze it over there. Okay, so it's not going to use anything that you have. Okay, so now I've uploaded the thread dump for our deadlock sample, and you can see over here it is showing that we have found the problems, right? So it is automatically detected that deadlock has been there. So you can see in the blocked state there are two threads, right? So thread 1 and thread 0. So the same fashion that we can read it in the thread dump, this is also listed, the thread 1 and thread 0, these are the block threads. And also when you scroll it, you will also see that deadlock will be there. Okay, okay, so you can see application is suffering from deadlock. Below are the threads which are causing deadlock. So it gives human readable format. So it is easy to understand for anyone who has not uh, previously experienced on collecting thread dumps and reading them or analyzing them. For them, it will be a very good tool to start off, right? So we can again see threads with identical stack. So it's giving every information that is needed for analyzing. Okay, so you can see CPU consuming thread stacked. So Santosh or someone was asking that how do you identify if these threads are consuming CPU? So it is already written over there, like CPU, these are consuming this CPU. 12 JVM threads are consuming the CPU. Just see the complete stack test. Once you click on that, it will give you the stacked. So these are the threads which are consuming cv. So destroy java, vm, service threads, some compiler threads. Okay, so if one particular some thread is problematic, then in that case, so you can see gc threads are also listed. So we all know that gc threads consume some cpu. So in parallel gc, you can see this number of gc threads which are actually working are listed over there. Okay, so this is all guys about the threads. Anything else if you think is something that we left out to cover, or some more things you need to understand on particular area, so let me know. And next we will discuss about the now we are done dealing with the thread dump. So next we will discuss about the heap dump. Okay, the similar fashion, everything about heap that has to be there, heap dump, we will discuss it, okay, in the next sessions. So this is for today's session. So let me know if any questions you have or any concerns, or otherwise we will conclude the session. Are you guys able to hear my voice? Can someone please confirm, because I am seeing? Okay. Hello? Can you guys please confirm if I'm audible enough? So we can answer.
Yeah, you're audible. I'm typing question, but it's like you are not looking at the chat map,
Okay.
chat
Okay.
window.
Okay, no problem. So Sano, so what is hash map? Okay, so hash map is nothing but it's kind of table which lists all of the addresses of your processes, and all of the addresses of the objects inside the inside one kind of table. So what concept is this? This is actually it is for giving it is for minimizing the regular looking. So you know the concept of indexing, right? So in the similar fashion, what hashmap does is it will store the address of the processor or address of the project program that has to be executed, right? And it will generate a hash code for that particular process. Okay, so whenever that particular process is being called, or whenever that particular process is seeking an object at particular level, that hash code will be referred. So that hash code will in turn return it to the actual location of that project, or actual location of that program, or actual location of that object inside your memory. Okay, so your memory is actually it is what do we say, it is segregated in different types of hash maps. Okay, so and the java program, it will refer these hash maps in order to access it at a very rapid speed, or rapidly as fast as possible. Okay, because because indexing is not possible inside the memory, right? Because inside the memory fragments, if you want to index the memory fragments, it will consume a high lot of another part of memory will consume for indexing only. So instead of indexing, it will use the hash map. Okay, so whenever a new object is stored, or whenever a new program is stored, it will automatically generate a hash code for it, and that hash code will be referred by your program whenever it is executing. Okay, so with the thread we discussed over here, no hash map, if a particular java thread or particular java program, whenever it is accessing the hash map, if it is not synchronized. Okay, not synchronized means, can you guys just a second guys, I had a call urgent. Okay, so what happens in case of thread is when there are multiple threads are accessing the hash map, and if they are not synchronized, it will automatically increase the CPU utilization, right? Because hash map is something that relates to directly to the memory, right? And accessing anything on memory will automatically create high CPU utilization for the threads. So that's why that wasn't a problem we discussed in the thread dumps. Okay. So any other question from Sano, Santosh?
Shitan, I'm left. Actually, I'm left behind because of the assignment in the office. Did we ever discuss AWR, please? Not yet.
Sorry, I'm not able to get that, Sano. What you want to do?
I said, did you ever discuss AWR, Automatic Workload Repository? Not yet.
No, actually, the PPT you want to say, right?
AWR report, like,
I'm still not getting you, Sano. I think there's some kind of voice break or audio break.
all right, let me type that one. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, AWR. So yes, AWR we are planning to do that again, Sano. So once this session is done, so next we are planning for heap dump, and after heap dump we are directly jumping to the database level performance issues. So we will cover for sure, no issues. But what I'm trying to do is I want to show you guys how we are generating AWR, and what are the different things involved. So I want to set up the Oracle database itself. So same thing you can do on your own. So I just want to make it simplified. So if in future if you want to practice it, or if in future if you want to refer it, so you can do it on your own, right? So actually I'm trying to work on it. So the same application that we had for our demo purpose, right? The JPEG store, this application JPEG store. So I'm trying to use that Oracle database for this JPEG store. So this is it's still under process, Shannon. So once I succeeded to have Oracle, I mean once I succeed to point this application to the Oracle database, I will surely show you guys the live of AWR reports, and how do you get this queries and everything. How do we analyze the AWR reports, and what do you look for the in an AWR report as a performance engineer's perspective. Okay, so that's not an issue. So, but before that, we are having this heap dump session. So next week, probably we will start with the heap dump, and we will discuss everything related to the heap dump, how we take the heap dump again on the same lines like we discussed for thread dumps with the uh, command line interfaces and using the tools. And there are how do we analyze the heap dumps using different tools, and how do we read the heap dump files, right? So after that, we are jumping to the database for sure, no issues with that. AWR reports will be covered. So apart from AWR, there are some other facts also that we need to check for database. So AWR is only for the Oracle database, right? But there are other databases in the market like SQL, MS SQL Server is also there. Nowadays, there are no SQL DBs, micro MongoDB, or big databases DB. So what are the different types of reporting, or what are the different types of monitoring you do for this kind of databases? So we will also see that. Okay. So I think no other questions for today's session. How many classes? So actually I cannot give you the counts, I know, because it depends on the topics. So for heap dump again, for heap dump we require 2 classes, and then for AWR might be again 2 classes, and then I'm planning to show you guys some case studies or some particular case studies of performance that I have experienced. So you can stick around some 5 to 6 more classes will be there, and then we will be ending up the course with one more class of revising the entire content. Okay, so there will be one class at the end, which we will have to revise everything that we learned from start. So probably by next week, this week, next week, we should be ending this, or we should be covering the entire session. Okay, so thanks for your support also, guys. Please practice, and please go through the recordings, and let me know if you have any other questions. Okay, so signing off for today. Good night, good morning for you. We'll see you in the next meeting.